So for the formatting and style guide, like I said, this was really something that we thought of as we've started reviewing more and more contributions now that we're almost 5 months into the program, which is crazy. And we don't have the Salesforce up and running just yet. We want to make sure that we're getting the program started on the right foot. And what we're finding is just having accurate data is extremely important. I'm sure you hear this in other forms of your job, but this is also true in the HCTC program. So in the current process that we have, Brianne and myself, and like Brianne said, especially Stephanie, she's doing tons of background work, reviewing all of the contributions that we're getting, reviewing the data. We're really taking the time to have our eyes on everything that you all are submitting to us to ensure that certificates, especially those with immediate frequency, are going out 100% accurate. There is only so much like data validation and error checking systems that we can put into the technology and the database. So once again, we're really making sure our eyes are on this, doing a double, even triple check of the data that is being submitted to us so that the certificates you're sending out to your donors are accurate and good to go. Catching any data errors and putting a lot of focus on this now is super duper important so that as our program grows and as more contributions are coming in, especially when Salesforce is up and more of you start submitting your contributions, we want to prevent any data inconsistencies from happening as we get more and more of them. So we don't want this to snowball into a super big problem. So we figured that's why it would be a good idea today to talk about data accuracy and proper formatting before we get too deep into the program. Having as few problems with our information as possible helps us to remove discrepancies and having as little ambiguity. And also helps to establish and maintain credibility in our program, both in our relationship with all of you and also in your relationship with your donors. We really do not want to send out certificates that have inaccurate personal information on there. So inaccurate social security numbers, names, addresses, any of that, we want to remove that from even being a possibility. We also want everyone to have complete confidence in the system. And so creating this best practice is really the most efficient way for us to move forward in having this continue. And we also want to make sure we're maintaining great relationships with all of you. I know some of you have received data validation emails from me already. I want to respect your time as much as possible. I know that all of you have so much else that you need to get done. So the less often that we need to reach out for data verification, the quicker that we're able to get those certificates to you, get reports to you, anything like that. And so we're all saving time by having fewer data check-ins. So again, with creating this formatting and style guide, again, just establishing those best practices early. Brianna and I are really big on that. We're super excited. We have the unique opportunity that this is a newer program, so we can start things on the right foot. And so having this style guide will hopefully help all of you follow that. The style guide will be going out after the presentation, and so I'll go over just a few of the common errors that we're seeing so far. But what we're really hoping is that as you are all submitting contributions both now in the current form on our website and also once Salesforce is up, hopefully you can have this format guide up on the side and you can follow it along as you're entering things in. So some of the common errors that we're seeing are, first and foremost, this may seem super self-explanatory, but punctuation. I'm not trying to be like the grammar police or the punctuation police, anything like that, but it really does make a difference. And the best example that I could think of is when you're entering your organization's name, you could be nonprofit co without a period or nonprofit co with a period. Either way would probably be accurate. However, in our database, when you make that tiny difference in entering a period or not, that then creates two separate organizations in our database, which means to pull your reports or when looking up certificates, we might see two different organizations. We know from knowing you and communicating with all of you, it's probably the same one. But again, as we grow, this might be harder and harder for us to find. And so hopefully you and any staff that you have submitting contributions could all just establish your best practice for how you want your organization written out. Because again, we don't want any duplicates or anything in there. This is also true. Punctuation can come in with names as well. This could be for someone's last name, like if it's O'Reilly or anything like that, or it could be in first names too. Can you tap the space? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so next we'll go into other ways that we might end up with duplicate data or mismatched data. Jacob O'Reilly, just so that you all know, this is a made-up name. This is none of your donors. I just want to make sure that's clear. Jacob O'Reilly is just a great name for us to use for all of the ways that we could input data in different variations. So again, with the punctuation, you'll see just going one line down, Jacob O'Reilly's tax ID name is that first line at the top. But by removing the apostrophe in his last name, that then creates a second form of his name where we could have two different Jacob O'Reillys with potentially monthly contributions or whatever it may be. And we would then have to double check with you like, hey, is this the same person? Is it not? What's the right way to spell their name? Same thing goes with the capitalization of the R in the last name as well. Again, I really don't want to be the grammar or the punctuation police or anything like that. Just showing you all how this can lead to so many variations of one donor, and we want it to be accurate on their certificate. So just making sure you're double, triple checking how those names are spelled on their tax ID, however you have that confirmed on your end, is super important. Another big thing that we're seeing are nicknames. And so somebody named Jacob, you might know them personally as Jake. They might have been a donor for years and years. You know them one-on-one. So Jake O'Reilly, you don't even think twice about entering it in that way. Totally understandable. But again, we just want that tax ID name, that first line up there of his name, to be entered correctly. Again, following tax ID, matching social security number, which I'll get to, all of that good stuff. Please make sure to enter their full accurate name. The last one on this slide that I would not have even thought of before starting this job, and so I don't blame any of you, we're all human for doing it, but spaces. I know you would think like that really shouldn't make all of the difference, but it truly does. So on that fourth line down, you can see between Jacob's first and last name, there's two spaces there. And then on the sixth line down, there's a space before his first name. And even though this is such a small difference, and you, again, like I wouldn't think anything of it before I started combing through this data, it again can create a whole other donor in our system. And I know sometimes if you're copying and pasting, I know I do it sometimes. If I'm copying somebody's name, I get the space before or after the word I'm copying. Just make sure you're really looking through that, being sure that you are like really double checking everything and looking at it with very detailed eyes so that we don't have that. It's totally okay. Like I said, we're all human and we can definitely check on that for you, but just the more that we can get this consistent as it's inputted, the easier it'll be for all of us. And so the last thing I want to talk about are social security numbers. So let's say John Smith and Jane Smith here, maybe they're married. They both contribute to your organization. However, John Smith is the one who has a social security number ending in 1234, but the donor that you've put on the contribution form and the certificate is his wife, Jane. So then your certificate would come up saying Jane Smith, social security number 1234, and all the other contribution information. Obviously, having somebody else's social security number and their name not matching on a certificate is something we really want to avoid. So making sure that when you're entering any spousal information, that it is their full name and their social security number. We can't have it mismatched, unfortunately. Another big thing that we'll see is having social security numbers with the wrong name. John Smith's 1234 social security number might be with Jacob O'Reilly. We will definitely make sure to double check that with you before even printing the certificate and sending it over to you. But yeah, just keep that in mind, that it's really important to double check these things as much as possible. If you take anything from everything I've blabbed about formatting and style guides today, just keep in mind that consistency is key, and that double and maybe even triple checking your information is super important. Rachel, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Hey, Sydney. So on the current contribution form, we can put both like a primary name and then a spouse name. Does that kind of take care of that? If we just if we put both names and then one of their social security numbers, are we good there?
I would say just make sure the person that you're putting first as the main donor may put their social security number, and then the spouse, leave them as the spouse, and you could leave their social security number off. That way you don't have to get both social security numbers if you don't want to, because I understand you don't want to keep track of all of that data, but yes, keep it that way for sure.
Okay.
And also in Salesforce, we're not even going to be collecting the spouse information, just so that when we were looking at the personal identifying information, we just wanted to only collect what we actually absolutely had to. So that was one decision that has been made since that contribution form was created, is we're not going to continue to collect the spouse information.
Okay. Can I ask you a follow-up question then?
Sure.
So what if we have a married couple, we have John's name and social security number. Let's say the gift is over $5,000, so we need to give you support. The check is made from Jane Smith's account. Do we need to then go and get her social and submit it under her name?
So John, in that case, John would not be on the account at all. His name isn't on the check at any point.
Let's pretend that it happens some of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can address that maybe and get back to you. I think just my initial reaction would be that we would want that documentation for the name to match. I understand that they would be filing jointly. But then if that donation was technically from Jane, then we would need to send that certificate to Jane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. But yeah, everything on the style guide and formatting guide will go out. There will be a bit more information on that. And again, if you have anything as you're filling out contribution forms that you're like, ooh, this might be good on the style guide, please feel free to reach out to me. I will be happy to edit it to make it as easy to follow for all of you as possible. And again, just remember, consistency and double checking everything will really make everything go so much more efficiently. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Brianne.
Thank you so much,